Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We might make a start. Welcome to the meeting of the Georges River Local Planning Panel for the 7th of November 2019. We are the panel who have been appointed by the Council to determine specified development applications, including development applications that are on this agenda today, and in accordance with the requirements of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act. My name is Paul Vgotis and I'm the chairperson for today's meeting. The panel members with me today are to my right, Mr. Michael Levy, one of our experts. To my immediate left is Helen Deegan, another expert. And to my far left is the community representative, Mr. Cameron Jones. I'm required to advise you that under the provisions of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act, this meeting is being live streamed and will be made available on the Council's website. Everyone must ensure that they speak into the microphone clearly when you come up to address the panel, and when speaking before the panel, members of the public should ensure their speech is respectful and appropriate. Any person using defamatory, discriminatory or offensive language may be exposed to liability to which this panel or the Council will take no responsibility for. Any part of this meeting that is held in the closed section will not be recorded. The panel have received completed assessment reports from the Council staff for the 5 development applications before us today. The panel have undertaken inspections of each site and the nearby locality of all the 5 matters on the agenda. We'll deal with the 5 applications in order as listed in the agenda, which is 977 Forest Road, Lugano, 47 Woodlands Avenue, Lugano, 3 Newman Street, Mortdale, 723 to 729 Princess Highway, Blakehurst, and then finally 7 to 11 Derby Street, Cogra. As required by the local planning panel code of conduct, panel members are required to disclose any conflicts of interest in respect to any of the matters on the agenda today. The relevant forms as prescribed by the New South Wales Department of Planning have been completed and are tabled for the Council to include on the website and also on the minutes of this meeting today, and they're also available for public scrutiny, so they're here if you'd like to look at them. No panel member today has disclosed any conflict of interest. As we progress through the matters on the agenda, only those persons who've been registered with the Council prior to this meeting will be permitted to address the panel. Each person will be provided with 3 minutes to address the panel, but if you need a little longer, let me know, because as the chair, I can grant that extension. In each item, we'll hear from the objectors first and then from the applicant. I would ask those persons that are seeking to address the panel to come forward and sit in front of us here and speak clearly into the microphone. Once we've heard from all the various speakers who have registered to speak for particular matters, then we'll move to the next application, but please remain seated because there might be questions that the panel might want to ask you. Once we've heard from all the registered speakers on each application, the panel will then adjourn for its meeting and in a closed session, and we'll deliberate on each matter and then make decisions. These decisions will be published on the Council's website tomorrow. So we'll move to the first item, which is the development application for the proposal at 977 Forest Road, Lugano. Now, registered to speak, we have against the proposal, we've got Mr. Phil Messini. Are you Mr. Messini here? Please come forward, sir. You can just take a seat and just bring the microphone down a little.
It's Phil Armson.
I'm sorry. The floor is all yours.
Okay, thank you. My property backs onto the church property in line with where the proposed outside play area is. I support the recommendation, obviously, of the assessment report that this application be refused. I've got 4 matters that I'd like to take issue with. Firstly, I disagree that noise barriers would effectively shield my property from noise from the outside playground. The church building towers 9 metres above the play area and my property. Noise will simply reflect off the top of that wall directly down into my property, irrespective of the height of a noise barrier. Secondly, I disagree that Ponderosa Place is a safe place for a safe street for a childcare centre. There's a lot said in the report about pedestrian safety within the church. Nothing's mentioned about Ponderosa Place. Ponderosa, it's a cul-de-sac. It's got no formed footpaths. Pedestrians walk on the road. And we have to accept that childcare parents will park in the street, and they'll park on both sides. So we'll then have a situation with pedestrians sharing effectively what is a one-lane street with two-way traffic. And that's more hazardous than any church parking scenario, particularly at night time or in wet weather. The third issue I have is the report says a plan of management would be necessary to control parking, traffic and noise. Such a plan to be a complete waste of time in this situation. There's been 4 years of noise complaints by residents about church activities, and during that period, council's been unable to enforce its noise-related consent conditions or prevention notice, and it's even been unable to enforce court orders. So there's little chance of residents having a plan of management being enforced. You may have seen a banner on the front wall of the church. It was put up 4 months ago following a decision by the Court of Appeal against the church. In part, the banner says, "There is worship of God here every day of the week. It is loud. Be offended and be human small." That apparently is the attitude of the church towards its neighbours and towards court orders. With that attitude, I say, what use is a plan of management going to be, or for that matter, any further consent conditions?
Please go on.
Yeah. My fourth point is the church's traffic report says the proposal is to make better use of the building. But the church was told, while it was still at the excavation of foundations stage, that this site was just not suitable for a childcare centre. The church could have at that time reduced the size of the building. Instead, it chose to increase the size. It only has itself to blame if the building is now underutilised. Council's assessment report for the second childcare centre said the introduction of a childcare centre will increase existing social impacts which are already at an unacceptable level. Nothing has changed for residents, and therefore refusal of this third application, I say, is again appropriate.
All right, thank you, sir. Just remain seated and I'll see if there are any questions. Libby?
No.
Any questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Our next submitter is Mr. Peter Gaynton. Please come forward, sir. Please proceed.
Thank you for allowing me to speak briefly to the panel. I'd like to start by drawing the committee's attention to paragraph 23 of the background, and I would also like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the considerable effort by council officers in dealing with the numerous submissions and consequent modifications, variations, pre-development advice, etc. by the applicant. It is also disappointing that each new application does not seem to build on the lessons from the previous refusals to adequately and completely design, cost and lodge a fully compliant application that meets Australian standards. As this report demonstrates, there are sufficient reasons, four of which I'll address further, for the panel to support the recommendation of council detailed in paragraph 120 of the report to refuse development consent. The first issue is whether or not it is a permitted or prohibited development. Over the 8 years the applicant has lodged several DAs, I observe that the criteria under which the application was assessed has changed considerably. I recall that the failure to meet Australian standards on the internal fit-out was significant in the past. It now appears that changing the application from a childcare centre to an early childhood education centre being assessed as a centre-based childcare facility means that compliance with the Hurstville Local Environmental Plan 2012 at paragraph 52 appears doubtful. I would therefore draw the attention of the panel to paragraphs 53 to 55 and suggest that in their deliberations they may need to ascertain a professional legal interpretation of the Children, Education and Care Services National Law New South Wales to resolve the doubts raised in the above paragraphs. Apparently, in that section, it states that the applicant has failed to confirm that the proposed activity is consistent with the definition of a centre-based childcare facility. In lodging an application, it clearly states that the cost should be a market value cost. This application, the costs are stated to be $10,000. While we understand that the applicant relies on voluntary labour and donations in kind to reduce the monetary value, it is not a current market value. It would appear the applicant has understated the following items: site preparation, waste management, protection of trees, construction, particularly of the acoustic barriers, complete unfinished items shown in the architect's report. Change of use, full costing to convert the existing lower ground or sub-basement area from an existing storage area to a fully compliant early childcare centre. And finally, the cost of channelization of the road by council-appointed contractor, construction of the front parking, etc.
Please proceed.
And I would note that in paragraph 23 of the background, that issue was raised by the council officers. Further on the traffic, the point of intersection of Ponderosa Place and Forest Road and Old Forest Road appears to be less than the 9 metres required. The existing southern vehicle access predates council requirements of 1 access point. However, moving that part of the driveway may make it subject to the existing council requirements that you can only have 1 access point rather than the 2 proposed in the traffic. There is issues with how the cars will manoeuvre, and there was additional space for reversing when you have to change direction, in both which was in one of the earlier plans for the rear and is missing in the front. This appears to be a safety hazard for children that has not been addressed adequately. And the panel does need to satisfy themselves that the traffic plan will alleviate traffic impacts on the local area, which I understand is required under the DCP DS 7.13, and the traffic plan does not address the time that the cars are parked while the parent walks the child to the childcare centre when it's parked at the front, signs the child in and returns to the car. I'd like to conclude by noting that I conducted a word search on the document on the word inconsistent, found 10 uses of the word by the officers, 8 were inconsistent, 2 were not inconsistent. These are at paragraph 7A, 27, 31, 85, 109, 117, and paragraph 27 in particular shows 8 physical measurements to be different across the various documents submitted. Council officers have identified the deficiencies in this application and have cast doubt on whether or not it is a permitted or prohibited development. And if permitted, is it compliant? Council recommends refusal, and the facts suggest the panel should endorse this by refusing the application. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gayton. Just remain seated and I'll see if there are any questions. Questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Our next submitter is Mr. Teripo Melifa. Would that be correct, sir? Pronunciation? And Mr. Lee, you're here as the town planner as well? Correct. Would you like to come forward? I'll grant leave for you to also make a submission if you wish. Who'd like to go first?
If I may, thank you, panel. Scott Lee is my name. I'm a planning consultant for this application. I believe that the panel may have received correspondence from the applicant requesting that the matter be deferred to this afternoon. The basis for that request is to enable us to continue to discuss outstanding issues with the council, with obviously a view to resolving those as best we can.
Okay.
And that's still our position. I believe there may also be a second submission that drafted by myself. Just
Plan of management that was received?
exactly, addressing particularly the council's request for a management plan of management for the centre, which we understand council's desire for, and the letter that's been submitted to the panel is an indication about the applicant's willingness to continue to work towards that, and in fact has provided with that letter the outline of a draft plan, which we believe covers the issues that council would expect to see in such a plan. So our request this afternoon is that the matter be deferred. We think that's a fair and reasonable outcome from the applicant's point of view, notwithstanding the fact that the application's been in the system for some time. We appreciate that, but in our view, that would sort of indicate to us that it deserves the opportunity to be fully, all those issues to be fully ventilated and all avenues for resolution to be exhausted before a decision was made. I'm happy to try and answer any particular questions the panel might have this afternoon, but it is very much our view for deferral.
You're the minister, aren't you? Okay. Is there anything you need to add to that, or is that your application as well, sir, to defer?
My name is David Malifa. I'm the person who submitted the application.
Please speak into the microphone.
If you were minded to agree with Mr. Lee to defer, then that is our first option. Were you to look at this as an ongoing, as to be decided today, then I just want to iterate what Mr. Lee just said. We're not going. This is a DA. We're wanting council to approve it, and we're not going to do anything that that would lead to council refusing this.
I think most applicants want their DAs approved.
I just want to make that statement because it's important.
Obviously, there's some adverse comments in this report which don't support your cause.
That is why I want to make that statement, because I acknowledge that there are complaints, and the last two speakers did not approve of the...
I think the complaints are one thing. I think there's a number of other issues relevant to the application itself.
And those are the issues that we would like to address before you make a final decision on those. Okay. I know they can be done. The fact that council has allowed this to progress to this stage means that this DA application is acceptable according to the rules and laws and whatever else there are in the area for this sort of development to take place.
All right. Okay, well, that's your submission, that's it. I mean, we understand that you're seeking a deferment.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. If there are particular questions, I'd be happy to try and answer those. I suppose our position is that we would dispute any inference that it's not a permissible development. We would make a submission that the combination of the existing use and the proposed use is actually something that can be supported and work together. Yeah. Believe that the church is, through that plan of management, willing to make those sorts of management decisions and commitments to enable that to operate successfully. The other outstanding issues of traffic management and acoustics in particular have been supported by some technical information which I think would benefit from a discussion with the council officers to clarify those matters. If you read through the report, as you obviously have, there is a lot of reference throughout the report to compliance with controls. The report is certainly not negative in all aspects. So it's those areas where the council still sees some conflict potentially, or some confusion in information, or a lack of clarity around information that we certainly think we would like to talk with the council directly about, and then enable them to either make an addendum report, or at least or of some sort at least before a final decision is made.
Can I ask, Mr. Lee, how you've had carriage of this for how long?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's probably about 12 months since, certainly sometime before we lodged the application, of course, and then that period. And there's been a number of people, I suppose, who have had some various roles in management of the DA. I certainly had some correspondence with council officer, not the council officer, by the way, who's written the report. I've never had any discussion, and I think that's part of why we think a deferral might be an appropriate thing, because the assessment report is being produced by an officer that we've had no contact with. Now, that's just a statement of fact, and it might have been a better outcome if we had been able to sit together and talk about those issues, and we could have perhaps provided greater information around the issues that officer now sees as problematic. So I think that alone, in my mind, would be a good reason why a deferral is reasonable. So I've been involved for some time, but clearly there are still some issues to resolve.
Yeah, it's being handled by an external consultant.
Well, now I understand that now, but I had no idea that was the case until the report was made public.
Right. Okay, all right. Well, I don't have any further questions.
May I just ask what sort of level of service or worship is undertaken on the premises now? So when would you hold services on the premises?
Sunday services.
Saturday services?
Sunday services.
Saturday and Sunday?
Saturday worship services are Sunday, and related services are Saturday.
Okay.
So what about through the week?
None.
Church?
Except for family devotions in the morning and in the afternoon. In the evenings.
What about extraordinary matters such as funerals, weddings? How do they progress?
If they do occur, it will be at night times, after 6, between 6 and 10, 11 at night.
Okay. I'll be honest, I haven't had a chance to look at the plan of management in any detail. Is that something you've looked at, Mr. Lee?
Mr. Chair, it's I suppose it's a draft. It's taking the form of similar type documents. This wouldn't be the first plan of management for a childcare centre or any other use for that matter. Yep. So it's my initial attempt at identifying the sorts of things that the council might like to have some idea of how it is managed, and it goes to the dual use of the property, you know, how church uses are managed as compared to how childcare uses are managed.
That was my next question as to the interrelationship of the plan of management with both uses, dual uses on the site. Yeah. I mean, this application is for one thing. Correct. Plan of management obviously crosses over.
Correct. Yeah, and there is, like I said, it's a draft plan, but there is a section in there that's the start of that information. And again, talking with the council officers before a decision is made would be advantageous to get the structure right and identify the sorts of things that need to be set in that plan, and then it can be embedded into any sort of consent if a consent was to be issued.
All right. Okay, Mr. Levy, any questions? Mr. Jones?
Yeah, Mr. Lee, there's a huge number of inconsistencies between reports and facts that we're reading in the report here. You believe these can be overcome with deferral?
I do. The short answer to your question is yes, I do. Yeah, look, I noticed in the report there's some of those. I'm not entirely or 100% sure that all of that information in the report is correct. A reading of some of that. One of the advantages of a deferral and a sit down with the staff obviously would be to make sure that we do have consistency, and particularly in those areas which are critical to the outcome. So I don't say there isn't any. I would say that it's a reason why we should be allowed to reconsider or rediscuss those matters, some of those issues are critical to a final outcome. Others are not so much, and there might be a very reasonable or easy explanation as to why one set of plans has a slightly different figure than the other. But again, I think we're more than happy to acknowledge where they are and then address them.
All right. Okay. Well, if there's nothing further, we've heard your submission, so a decision will be taken later today and published on the council's website. So,
Right. Thank you, panel.
thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Moving to the next item on the agenda is number 47 Woodlands Avenue, Lugano. Registered to speak 3 people. Evelyn Mugalius, please come forward, ma'am.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to address the panel today. Look, I'd like to start by acknowledging the good work that Council's done in pulling this report together. I think it quite well represents the concerns that certainly my husband and I have put forth. What I would like to do today, however, is to speak to a number of areas of concern that I think have been understated in Council's report. Firstly, there's the issue of parking for visitors. In Coachwood Place, we currently only have 2 shared parking spaces for the 8 existing properties, and these are already in high demand. Currently, what we have when situations where when some residents and their visitors can't access these 2 spaces, they will often park elsewhere on the Coachwood Place right-of-way, which often restricts access up and down the right-of-way for other residents. So providing access through Coachwood Place for an additional 2 properties as proposed by this application will only make this problem worse. There simply just isn't enough, there aren't enough visitors parking spaces now, let alone being able to accommodate more properties and their visitors. Secondly, there's the issue of disruption to Coachwood Place residents over an extended period of time. As it is now, you would have seen on your site visit that the Coachwood Place right-of-way is very narrow, very tight in some places, difficult to navigate for large vehicles. And as it stands, even small builds require neighbours to negotiate with each other to make sure that we don't restrict access to each other's properties and to make sure that we're not overly disruptive. And they're on small builds. And what's proposed, in my opinion, is a very large build, which will require large vehicles and large machinery to come down at Coachwood Place and build works over a long period of time. And I simply can't see how that kind of large build will not restrict access unduly to us as residents and not impact on our lives over a significant period of time, which I think would be required to complete construction. Simply put, I think Coachwood Place was not built or designed to accommodate the kind of extension and to support additional properties. It wasn't developed, in my mind, it was developed for to support the 8 existing properties and not more. In addition, I think there's a very high risk of damage to the Coachwood Place right-of-way, to the road there, and there's no proposed plan by the applicant on how any potential damage will be managed or the cost of repairs will be managed. As it stands, we've already had lots of examples in the past where very large vehicles have tried to come down and find it difficult to navigate getting through some of the more narrow points of access and to navigate turns, and there's been damage caused to the road, which the existing residents have had to manage. It's highly likely that there'll be additional damage caused by proposed new build, especially when we consider the very large machinery and the deliveries that will be required for that build and have to navigate their way down that street. Finally, I was very concerned to read in the report that despite Council's numerous requests from Council, the applicant has to date not sought owners' consent to undertake works or to provide access to the development via the Coachwood Place right-of-way, and is instead seeking consent by way of a deferred commencement determination. If this determination and approval was granted pending owners' consent, I think this will place owners, particularly the owners of number 3 next door to the proposed property, in a very unfair and potentially vulnerable position. I think it will also potentially place them under great pressure to provide consent down the track. Finally, I think it points the lack of attempt to gain owners' consent to date, I think points to a lack of awareness and at worst a lack of regard for the impact that this build will have on the Coachwood Place community. It's for those reasons that I urge you strongly to refuse this application.
All right. Can I ask, can you just tell me where you are?
Okay.
Just mark it with a pen.
Here's the development. We're there.
Right. Okay, good. Thank you. I'll just see if there's any questions. Lee?
No, I just have confirmation that we're there.
It's there.
So assume
Is it,
Yep, it's the,
So, this is my property here.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's no access.
yeah. Okay. Yeah. All
that
right.
sounds considerable.
Any questions?
No.
All right, thank you. Thanks very much. Our next submitter, Ms. Joan Bailey. Please come forward, ma'am. Now, whereabouts are you? There's no address. It's number 6.
Which is, can you just,
Yep, we'll just have a look here.
Good evening, Chairperson Paul and
Ms.
the rest of
Bailey,
the panel.
can you,
Oh.
would you mind just marking where you
Okay.
are as well?
Okay, good, but you hold my glasses on.
That's okay.
Here.
All right, thank you. Thanks very much.
My name is Jane Bailey and I live with Don, my husband, at 6 Coachwood Place. And we built our house in 2000, just after the council approved the right of carriageway of Coachwood Place. The council specified the construction of Coachwood Place, even the name. The council approved and requested that only 8 dwellings could use the right of carriageway. Water, electricity, gas, telephone, and a huge draining system was installed in the middle of the carriageway. The council requested a maximum number of gum trees should be saved, including the ones at the bottom of the right of carriageway, and a retaining wall was built to save the trees. 2 visitors' parking bays were made, and extra parking is on some of the blocks. The 8 blocks that now have been built on and family occupied each of them. Each of the owners have paid and own the right of carriageway. The right of carriageway was passed by the council to only be used by 8 dwellings. This is my objection to 47 Woodlands Avenue.
All right, thank you.
Oh,
Just
any
remain,
questions?
any questions? We'll just find out.
Yeah.
no, all good, thank you.
All right, thanks, man. Thank you. The next submitter is Kenny Lynn. Now, you're at number 3. Number 3. And I'll just put a square or something on there.
You're joining
With the one that they're proposing to build.
All right,
this one here.
all right.
Yes.
Good. Yep,
Yeah, that one.
okay. Thank you.
So
Please
I'm actually,
proceed.
yes, so just briefly, I was quite surprised at the time I was on holiday, coming back home for my mum freaking out that there will be a property going through our outdoor garage of 3 Coachwood Place. I was just going through the DA application at the time and I was quite shocked as I'm actually an architectural student myself, who teaches first year students, and this proposal is actually very crazy and out of the norm. First of all, we never gave any consent into building through our outdoor garage. There was no notification of any sorts until the attention was brought to our matter, and one of our lovely neighbours had a lawyer that actually required the other party to resend the original DA applications, and that's when we actually got the first news of this proposal. So we were very upset and shocked that the developer actually just went over us without any forms of communication for this type of construction. The Coachwood Place, I'm sure you've all visited the site, is very narrow and quite steep. The garbage trucks can't even come down on Thursdays to pick up our garbage, which results in us actually physically dragging it up the quite steep incline hill of about 40 degrees, I'd say. It's definitely not going to cater to all the construction vehicles that they will need for that building. And the most sad part is that they actually already have their own driveway that they could use and that they are using at the moment. The only reason that they are proposing to go for our Coachwood Place is that they want to build something that's much bigger, which that single driveway they can't cater to at the moment. And if they are thinking of building from Coachwood Place, is that at the moment the max building height that they're going with is what Woodlands Avenue is offering. If they are proposing in building through Coachwood Place, should they not be catering to the max building height of Coachwood Place, which is quite low at the moment compared to the structure that they propose?
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Just remain seated and I'll see if there are any questions in the panel. Mr. Levy?
No.
At no stage you've given any owner's consent?
No,
Okay.
at no stage.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask the lead to address? I didn't write out the work when the notification includes.
Yes, please come forward. Now you're speaking against this application, I take it? And your name is, sir?
William Morris, and I,
William Morris.
yeah, and I reside at 47A Woodlands Avenue.
You're at the front.
47A
Yeah,
Woodlands.
So
Right,
you're the property immediately adjoining the
that's
entry.
correct, yes.
okay.
Is this sorry.
Yeah, on the road, yeah, that's right.
No, up
Off the
top.
top.
Up the
Here
top,
Behind.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
yeah, that's fine. Now, you've heard the submissions from the other three speakers. Don't need to repeat those,
No.
but please.
We wrote a submission in and the development in its current form, the building goes right up to our back fence.
Yep.
And is of such a height that it would stop our views of the Georges River because it's about 7.8 meters at our back fence. And we've been there for 30 years enjoying the views. And now this building comes up and just bangs straight up. So we lose the enjoyment there. Also too, we've lived next to that the 47B and C, and even in the current format with a flat and the house, the access to it is very restrictive. And just having 3 vehicles coming in and out of that access is causes some problems. Also too, there's an issue with the development of Coachwood Place with the rubbish going out. There is not enough places to put the rubbish bins out now. The council have to send someone down in a van to move the bins out on the street. And it's just, the application is just, hasn't addressed any of them.
So that's you up the top there?
You can't see us way in front. You can't see us because of this
Right.
great big
That's
wall
in
in
the
the.
hole.
Okay, tucked in behind there, good.
What I'm saying is that the height of that building is,
Yep.
we look out the back of our property straight into it.
Okay,
So it's,
Good.
yeah, that's, thank you.
okay, that's your submission, sir?
Yes, sir.
All right, I'll just see if there's any questions. Mr. Levy? Steve?
No.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Now, there doesn't appear to be any one submitted on to register to speak or make a submission on behalf of the applicant. So a decision will be taken by the panel later today and posted on the council's website. So that concludes that matter. Moving to the next item on the agenda, which is number 3 Newman Street, Mortdale, which is the boarding house application. Now, we have 3 people registered to speak against the proposal and a few people registered to speak for the proposal. Firstly, Kath Waters. Ms. Waters? We have Kath Waters in the gallery. No, we don't. Shafag Bakashalin, please come forward. Applause all yours, ma'am.
Thanks for letting me speak today.
You speak into the microphone.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you for letting me speak today. I was actually overseas during the neighbour notification period, which is why I wasn't able to express my concerns over this proposed development. So the first issue I have is regards to the number of proposed car parking spaces, which are just not sufficient at all for the number of boarding rooms at 19 and resulting number of occupants for 29 people. While the issue of the dimensions of the proposed parking have been questioned in the assessment report, rightly so, I'd just like to put forward a point that was not covered in the report very well, and I suspect this was possibly due to a lack of a traffic assessment report. So the original application had proposed 4 car park spaces, and in an effort to meet the building standards of affordable housing, the design has now been changed to 11 car park spaces. However, whilst it's already very unrealistic to think that 11 spaces will be enough for 19 rooms, this issue is actually made worse by the fact that 10 of the 19 rooms, so more than half, are actually double occupancy. So this means that there will be 29 occupants in the proposed building and only 11 car park spaces. This is not sufficient at all and will strain the already very limited parking available on Newman Street. You may have seen during your inspection that there's many no stopping, no parking signs along Newman Street due to visibility issues for drivers, and this has already impacted our parking availability for the neighbourhood. And personally, I often have to park my car in Jersey Avenue, which is about 200, 300 metres away from where I live, just because there is no parking available. This is also the experience of many of the other current residents in the area. There's also now proposed plans by council to put a pedestrian crossing on the intersection of Newman Street and Ocean Street, with parking completely prohibited around it, based on the proposal. Therefore, such limited parking for this development will only increase, the very limited parking we have. This is a really big issue for us. My second issue is that this area has been a family-orientated one for decades, and the majority of houses to the south of the proposed site have families living in them, as do the apartment buildings to the north that you would have seen. And I worry that by allowing the building of a boarding house, this may set a precedent for the future where along Newman Street, many of the houses in Newman Street will be bought by private companies, such as the applicant State Projects, and further boarding houses built in an effort to maximise profits, given the small space of land available on each property. So this is definitely going to have an effect on the demographic of the area, and this is going to drive away families currently living there and potential future families who would like to move to the area who will be disencouraged from doing so by the presence of a boarding house. And my final point is more of a general one, but just that the original proposal for this application was 6 multi-dwellings on this land. Then the design was changed to a boarding house with the benefits that regulations for affordable housing provide. And there's also been obviously many changes, 4 car park spaces, 11 car parking spaces. And based on the fact that the application design keeps changing very quickly, it's quite clear that little consideration has actually been given to the design of the building and planning for the development, as well as its impact. And this is made even more evident by the fact that there have been discrepancies between the different plans that were submitted in the original application, particularly in relation to the parking spaces. And that, as the assessment report correctly said, there's many of the required assessments have not actually been submitted. For example, the traffic assessment, the waste management plan revisions, and importantly for neighbours, a management plan for how the boarding house is going to be managed. So that's important for the issues such as complaints that we might possibly have. And these are issues that will only be able to be captured in such assessment reports. And if we have no idea what the potential problems are going to be, we're only going to experience them once it's actually constructed, and then it's just going to be too late. So I would really like to ask the panel to refuse this application.
All right.
Thank you.
Just remain seated and I'll see if there are any questions.
All good, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Our next, Damien Rowlands. Is Mr. Rowlands here? Oh, I'm sorry. It's in relation to another one. Sorry. Okay. Mr. Andrew Durrick and Mr. Peter Prasad. Yes, please come forward, both of you.
So we're not together.
Oh, sorry. Is Mr. Durrick here? Yes, that's right. Please come forward. Okay. Please proceed.
Good afternoon. I'm the planner for the applicant. I'm just really here to answer questions if there are questions that arise.
Well, yes, there are, quite a few actually. As you can see from the recommendation, it's recommended for refusal. So, sorry.
Yeah.
Hang on.
Okay, so
Which one are you here for?
I'm here for 723 to 729 Princes Highway, Blackhurst.
Okay, no, this is not the application. This running sheet's incorrect.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Item 4.
Yeah, this is on the wrong item. So that's that one. Got that one. So who is here speaking on behalf of number 3 Newman Street, Mortdale, for the applicant? Do we have someone? Please come forward. So you're Mr. Peter Prasad? That's correct, right. Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Durrick, but this sheet was incorrect. So, Mr. Prasad, you've read the recommendation?
I have.
Okay. Obviously, I'll let you address the panel first, and then we'll see if there are any questions.
I'm Peter Prasad, the applicant, and the owner of the property. I've read the recommendations from the council, and in part, I've actually prepared a 3-page report, but I'm not sure if you want to go through this. I can hand it over.
What does that report do?
It's just a point form of...
Are you going to use that to address us?
Yes.
All right, well, perhaps you read to that first.
I've got a copy here.
All right, okay. Thank you.
Thanks. In a nutshell, the boarding house proposal has been 1.5 years since we first lodged the DA. There was a change of planners. The SEP for the affordable boarding house was changed. Initially, we had four car parking space at the rear, which complied for the boarding house SEP. And then there was a change of the planners. Apparently, the planner left from council, and the second planner came in and asked for a revised car parking layout. And then we had to put under the new boarding house SEP, then we had to put a basement car parking in there and change a few little things. The property, as noted, is a 2-story, 2-level property, which doesn't have a high environmental impact. It's got 3 street frontages. It's surrounded by multi-unit developments and unit developments all around. The train station is about 7 minutes walk. We've got 2 train stations nearby. In terms of the report of the council, in terms of refusal, there are matters of traffic. In the meantime, once we read the report, which is a couple of days ago, we've got a traffic report, and it's recommended for some minor changes within the car park to comply with the traffic requirements.
That report has been, when was that prepared?
That's prepared, basically sent to us today. That hasn't been submitted to council. So that is only post what we...
Right, so that report responds to the council's
yes. So,
assessment.
And there was a bike storage area that didn't comply. They wanted to make it 2.5 for the motorbike. That is satisfied. The waste management, which was in the basement, recommendation to move it up, and also the bicycle area bicycle storage to be relocated.
Right.
So that would comply with the car parking requirements, which is under the new minor changes that would be put in the conditions of consent. Going through the items of non-compliance in the report, there is also the issue of the arborist. There's a tree, the fern tree.
Yep.
We have also, as of today, got a arborist letter. Not a full arborist report that has to be prepared. And basically the arborist is saying that that tree can be removed or transplanted if required by the council.
But that tree's not on your property though, that's in the adjoining property?
It's on the boundary. Basically, it's on our property, and the fence sort of goes quite close to, but majority of the trees on our property.
It's on your property?
Yes. Yeah. So the recommendation of the arborist is to either take the tree out or replant it, whichever is requested. So that was the arborist report. The third item that was as part of the report of the refusal of council is the basics. Well, we never submitted an amended basics. We never submitted a basics to council because this required a section J, and that's what we submitted, a section J. We've gone back and addressed the section J requirements with the parking changes and some of the amenity changes, and the report. The amended report, what the word we got today is it will be compliant to the satisfaction of council and the planning controls. The other item was the waste management. Yes, the waste management is in the basement, and there's a lift in there. We've relocated that out at the back, so it's easy access for the residents and the garbage collection and so forth. And that's easily done. Stormwater, and that's an engineering issue. In terms of stormwater, that can be easily amended to comply with the size of the OSD tank, which is not going to be a huge issue. These are the major issues that was outlined, and in considering the refusal of the DA, sorry, one more issue, there was the talk of the windows which are closer to the boundary, which required protection. We had a letter from the fire engineer saying that the windows could be protected with a mesh, and the council report mentions the mesh. Well, there's a mesh, or you would do a DTS requirement, deemed to satisfy. We could put a drencher system, and be happy to do a drencher system or a fire shutter if that's applicable. And that's
so was that an inquiry that you made with your FCA consultant?
Yes, a fire engineer.
Right. That there's another report coming.
That's right, because the council raised that issue up in the discussions prior to finalising it and saying these windows. So we got a letter from the fire engineer addressing the issue.
All right, but in response to this report, no.
Yes, we have the report coming through.
Right. Okay. So what's your application today before this panel? What do you want to do?
I would like,
because at the moment you're faced with a recommendation to refuse.
Yes.
And you realise the planning controls, you're hanging in there by a thread because of the savings and transitional provisions that you enjoy through this application. So if you were to abandon this application, you'd have a problem with density, wouldn't you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I would like the panel to obviously approve it with conditions, and those are some BCA issues, the basics of traffic, which we've gone away to address all the issues, or to defer the matter, and we'll provide the reports.
Because at the moment, that material that you've now sourced is not before the council.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes.
Which means that you'll have to amend your application and you'll have to get permission of the council. The council would have to grant you that permission or consent to amend your DA.
Yep.
At the moment, that's not before us, and we don't have the power to deal with that. That's a matter that you'll have to go back to the council with. We're charged with the responsibility to assess this application on its face.
Yep.
So if it is your intention to submit this fresh information or additional information, which was requested by the council probably months ago, I'm not quite sure.
No, it wasn't. This was not requested. The arborist was not requested at all. And if it was, we would have provided it. There were other items requested, which we provided and amended the plans. So all I'm saying is this minor changes to the car park, which doesn't have any impact on the setback of the building, the height of the building. It's only the internal changes which the traffic car parking can incorporate within the framework of what it has.
Right, but as I said, you'll have to ask this panel to do something today.
I'm requesting the panel to approve the development.
Okay.
And
in the alternative?
In the alternative, if it is in the alternative, we are happy to provide the additional information to council.
Which means that you're seeking a deferment.
We shall be seeking a deferment.
Okay. All right. All right. I think that's, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I think that's what you're trying to do. Is that right?
That's right.
All right. Okay. I'll just see if there's any questions. Have you finished your submission?
I'll finish. That's basically in a nutshell, yes.
All right. Okay.
Thanks. I'm just a little bit concerned that this additional information that nobody else has had a chance to review it. So yeah, I think that does impact on where we can proceed. But you were talking about minor changes in the basement. One of the big issues seem to be how cars manoeuvre in there and the ability of cars to be able to go in and out in a forward direction. Could you tell me what changes there are to the car parking, either numbers or layout, that will enable cars to be able to manoeuvre in a satisfactory way in the basement?
The waste area is going to be relocated. The building car park is at one on the end. The car park on the end here. That wall will be moved out to allow for more circulation.
Enlarge the basement?
Enlarge the basement, yes. Right? And that's all within the footprint. Enlarge the basement to get the more circulation in that area. And then this is a rejig of this area here where the disabled car park is, accessible car parking is, to allow for more maneuverability within the same framework.
Right.
And this is a rear access. It's surrounded by 3 streets. The whole development you've seen today, and it has no impact. It's right at the rear. There's not much traffic at all. Neither foot traffic, no car traffic on the back area, even on this area here. And there's Newman Street here, and there's the other street in here, which accesses straight down. So, in terms of traffic load, is very minimal.
Can I ask you, is there an appetite to reduce the number of rooms? Given the planning controls of where you are.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
So, hypothetically, would you be prepared to remove some of the rooms? So rather than have 19 rooms, would you be prepared to reduce?
Or possibly can.
Given where you sit in
Yes.
relation to the planning controls
Yes.
and the savings provisions?
Yes, I understand.
Which
Yes.
would then dramatically decrease the number of rooms that you can, a fresh DA would be able to be made for.
Well, it
Can
depends.
you discuss that with your planner?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
No.
We might want to do that.
We would like to pursue with this. I mean, if that's the question being that if it's a room or 2 or a double to be single, that may be a possibility.
Right. Okay. Steve?
Just asking, obviously you have pursued some of the information. What about the preparation of a plan of management for the boarding house?
That will be underway. We haven't finalized that at the moment.
You've said that the changes to the basement have made the basement larger. Do you know if you still comply with landscaping?
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
And it appears to me that there's, through the council officer's report, that there's been several requests for some fundamental changes to make the boarding house work a lot better.
Yep.
Are you prepared to make these fundamental changes, or are you just more or less wanting to stick with the 19 rooms?
Oh, no, we're happy to make, and we've done 2 changes, one with the first planner, and then the second planner came in and also wanted some changes the way he wanted it. We amended those as well. And we've got main thing I like about this, it's got a breezeway on the first floor, which is open all the way through. And it's quite wide, but that was part of our design. And I think it's a good thing to have more flow through. But yeah, we're happy to make changes to complement the building design and the surrounding. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the issues, as I said, is the building itself, as per the planner's report, is fine. It's just there's those minor little changes with the BCA issues, which can be built into the DA, and traffic, which we've already got some advice on.
All right. If, and I qualify the word if, the panel was minded to defer this application, what sort of time frame How quickly could you get this material to council?
Prior to the next panel meeting. It's a monthly, I understand.
Yes.
I'm looking at it in the next couple of weeks.
So 21 days would be adequate?
21 days is very adequate.
Okay. I'm not preempting what we may do. It's a decision that we'll have to make later.
Appreciate that.
But thank you for your submission. Is that everything you need to?
Yep. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for your time. That concludes that item. Moving to the next item on the agenda, which is 723, 729 Princes Highway, Blakehurst. I do appreciate, Mr. Derrick, you were here before. Is he? Okay. I'll just hear from Mr. Rowlands first. Please come forward, sir.
I'm Damien Rowlands. I'm the owner of 731 Princess Highway, Blakehurst.
You're talking to the microphone.
Directly neighbouring the development.
Yep.
I'd like to question why wasn't the submission referred back to the DRP, as it was a substantial change. That is when it should be referred to the panel. The panel felt that the application was an overdevelopment of the site and encroaches on the height, encroaches on the foreshore boundary line, encroaches on the ADG setbacks, and there are insignificant room to access the driveway ramp. It's an overdevelopment. On page 86 in the solar access section, we notice states generally compliant. This is a nice statement unless you're the person living in the house that doesn't receive the sunlight. We feel that it is completely unacceptable that the applicant has a site in excess of 1,000 square metres but can't design a building that complies with the solar access requirements to my house. On page 101 of the report, it states it's inevitable that 731 Princess Highway will be impacted by a redevelopment at the subject site due to the southern orientation. The reduction in the height of the building will reduce the length of the shadow cast. The shadow diagram indicates that 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. the front and northern side of 731 Princess Highway will be overshadowed. However, the rear of the property will be free from any shadow cast by 11 a.m. onwards. Although the front property will not receive a minimum 3 hours of light during the day in midwinter, the rear of the property is where the private area of the open space is located and where the main living areas are orientated, given that this is where the water views are. Given that this is the main area for entertainment and where the main living areas are situated, this part of the property will receive ample solar access during midwinter and will satisfy the KDCP's provisions. I set back some minimums. The proposal can always sit further away from the boundary. This would allow for compliant levels of overshadowing and less dominating form blocking northern light. The proposal is an overdevelopment of the site, and to state that the main living spaces are located at the back of the house, so that's okay, is ridiculous. It's also totally ridiculous to have 22 conditions of items to be amended prior to an issue of a CC. Applications should be amended prior to the determination to reflect those changes, or at least defer commencement to be applied so that 22 items are addressed prior to the DA being granted. We feel that if such a development is allowed to be built in such a, it will set a precedent for similar developments in the future to be approved in such small parcels of land, which will dramatically change the landscape of the area. Currently, in the other direction of 731, there are 3 blocks of land totaling 1,060 square metres, meaning that if a developer was to buy those 3 blocks of land, they could essentially build the same, leaving 731 in the middle of 2 large high-rise developments. This could potentially put us in the position where we would be forced out or suffer the consequences of a dramatically reduced value in property value. We feel that it is the council and panel's responsibility to protect the residents from big developers taking over. On the amended drawings, the new proposed communal area within the increased setback of 9 metres adjacent to 731 Princess Highway will impact the privacy and create noise pollution to the residents of 731 Princess Highway. This proposed area is pointed out as as pointed out above, will have little to no sunlight and is not suitable. This is strongly opposed and should be moved to an alternative area. We urge the Council Planning Department and this panel to respect our objections and ultimately come up with the same conclusions and reject this application. Thank you.
Right, just,
So, I mean, one of the problems I had was it was 150 pages long and I had 3 minutes to address many issues. So I just have a few issues
okay,
on
well,
this. If you're happy
look,
to take
I'm-
it, if you're not, that's
I'm
fine.
happy for you. Have you finished your submission, or is there something else that you wish to raise?
I haven't got any more time to keep going. It's, you know,
How much more time do you need?
well, there's quite a few issues on the other thing. I can list a few on page 7. It states the building encroaches on 7.6 foreshore building line at the rear.
Yep.
The building has been located to be compliant with the foreshore building line, with encroachments involving the balconies and ground floor courtyards in part basement car park level. Given the narrow width of the site, it's difficult to achieve a suitable building depth by also achieving a 7.6 foreshore boundary line and a front setback of a minimum of 5 metres. With this breach,
I don't want to cut you off, but apart from the technical breaches,
yes,
what are the principal impacts on you?
well, mainly overshadowing and
The technical breaches we can
okay,
look at.
yeah, yeah.
But I'm more interested on the impact this development will have on you, on your property,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
your livability.
Well, the height of the proposed development is still not compliant, and we feel it's unacceptable. Once additional plant and equipment not shown on the drawings are submitted and are added to the roof, this will increase the height and be above and beyond what we feel is allowed.
Okay, and that is going to impact on you how?
Or overshadowing issues
Right,
as
so
well.
it's overshadowing? Yep.
Overshadowing. Also, the amended plans now have additional units that are below the natural ground level. It seems that these units are in the basement of the car park. I cannot see how this consists with the area in Shipwrights Bay.
Again, come back to how this proposal is going to impact on you and your family.
Okay. Well, negative property value if we can be built in.
Yeah, okay, that's an isolation issue that you've mentioned.
There's a deep soil zone impact that impacts that could indicate on the boundary that has potential to damage the infrastructure, the waterproofing and the infrastructure of the building foundations.
On your
on our block,
property?
yes.
Okay, so there's a waterproofing issue. Yep.
Traffic will also increase during the construction and development.
Yeah, okay, that's an interim thing. That'll happen and
Okay.
go. It'll subside.
Well, other than the technical ones,
Apart from the technical ones,
well, that's what I was concentrating on the report.
Yeah.
It's a 50 report. I was addressing the report
Yeah.
more than addressing my personal feelings.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm interested in your
kind of
personal
irrelevant.
feelings.
Well, it destroys our life, basically. We've built this house to be a family home for my kids and wife.
Yeah.
And also a future nest egg for the family. And we feel that councillors, you know, or we feel that we've done something that benefits the area in building our house.
Mm.
We feel that this is inappropriate for the area. We don't feel that it's consistent with anything else that's in the area and as in height. And I think it sets a precedent and sets a bar, I think, pretty low for the area of what is to come in the future across the road and around us.
Yeah, well, yeah, the planning
To
controls
mention
have changed.
You know,
Yeah.
it's not just the 1,060 approximately square metres beside us that could be developed as well. It's the Bay Blue restaurant that could be developed as well, leaving the 3 potential properties there isolated in between 2 developments. So that's a major concern, as well as parking down in that, down in the car park down there. It's a very busy spot there, and it's quite hard to get in and out of the car park as it is, let alone your driveway and all that sort of stuff. As well as their car park seems to be a bit of a zigzag railway setup that doesn't seem like it's going to be easy to get in and out of. That will impact, in my opinion, the Princess Highway. That, you know, they have quite a few accidents because of the shop there already.
Yeah, well, Okay, that's an ongoing issue that it's traffic management. I mean, in relation to the traffic impacts on you,
Yeah,
they are.
getting in and out of my driveway.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's entry and exit. Yep.
As well as visitors.
Visitors. Yep. Anything else?
Just disabled access too. Worry about disabled. I have elderly parents that have disabled and they park down there and it doesn't look like there's any disabled access or anything happening with the disabled access down at that section there.
Right.
For the car park.
Okay. I'll just see if there's any further questions to the panel.
Yep. If I can just confirm, this is your house is the house currently under construction next door. Whereabouts are your living areas and your principal private open space?
Through the whole house actually, because the way it's set up is a split level house.
Okay.
So it's designed to incorporate the bedrooms with the rumpus room at the back of the house and the front of the house.
So where's for
implies that
example,
we
the
don't have a
living
water view
area?
on that side. We have a great view on that side. We use that side of the house quite frequently. The house has been designed to use that
The highway side.
the highway side, because as you go up a level, you have a better view of the water.
So you're looking at the motorboat club.
So, yes,
Yeah.
that's correct.
So the living area is on the upper level?
Yes, on both. There's a rumpus level and a lounge dining room.
Okay, and does the lounge dining room face the
Water, yes.
water?
It's facing east.
Yes.
West.
Oh, sorry, but your other area up top, you're looking in the
We
morning?
can see both.
Both.
Yes, both
So
sides.
the rumpus faces the main road?
Yeah, no, rumpus faces the water too, but because it's a split level, you can see through both.
Okay.
Both sides.
And principal private open space? So your outdoor open space areas?
Back, yeah.
Back. That's all.
I just wanted to know, just I suppose with respect, you are in the R3 zone, which is a medium density zone. So in terms of the type of character and types of property you're going to see emerging in your locality, it is going to be of a scale and nature to this application. And I'm saying that by way of, I suppose, advice that you're not in a low density residential zone. You are in a zone that does allow for that larger scale projects.
And that's why when we lodged the section 96, we inquired with council if we're able to do a dual occupancy or a unit there on our 300 square metres. They've got 1,000 square metres and doing 17 units.
Yeah.
We've got 300, we're not allowed to do a dual occupancy. On my section 96 actually states this house is not to be used as a dual occupancy, which we did inquire because we are aware that it's R3. You know, so when we lodged the section 96, we were aware with this, and we did try and do something, but we were knocked back by council saying that it wasn't inappropriate, and we felt that drew the line in the sand. So we thought that would be okay for us to proceed with our development, you know, of building a family home, pretty much.
Okay. Jones?
How long have you owned the property for?
We've owned the property for approximately 10 years now. We lived there for 8 years before, and we were trying to make this happen for 10 years pretty much. So this is where we're at. Yeah.
All right. Okay, well, there's nothing further.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Darrick, I apologise for before. All right, so you've heard Mr. Rollins' submission, I have, and your application is recommended for consent. So, is there anything you'd like to?
I might just respond to some of the things Mr. Rollins raised, particularly in relation to solar access and the concern about the effect on the eastern elevation. From what I understand, most of the eastern front yard, so if you go to page 154, it shows a photo of the eastern front yard. Most of that is driveway, giving access to the double garage. And then there's a large window above that. Now, there's concern that at 11 o'clock, the proposal's going to overshadow that window, but that building's actually overshadowing itself at 11 o'clock because the sun's north is not directly up. North is at a skew, and that's why there's solar access at 11 in the backyard.
Yeah.
So effectively, that's going to retain, that eastern room is going to retain its morning sun up until 11, unaffected by the proposal. And in the afternoon, on the quiet side, on the water side, there's going to be sun from 11 all the way through to 3 or well after into the afternoon. The proposal certainly satisfies the height control in relation to the site to the south. It's the lift overrun, which gives access to the communal open space, excuse me, that is a metre over the height control. The actual parapets of the building are almost 3 metres below the control. So that lift overrun sits right in the middle of the building and has no impact whatsoever in terms of solar access on Mr. Rowland's property. I didn't quite understand, sorry, I was struggling to hear about the disabled access, whether that was to the proposal or whether that was actually to Mr. Rowland's house. I didn't quite understand.
Well,
that
I understand it's just he has elderly parents, so it'd be more in relation to his property.
Okay. Well, there's no obstruction in terms of the footpath and so on from the public car parking area back to Mr. Rowland's property. If anything, all of that will be upgraded. All of those driveway crossings that are currently there will no longer be there, and the car park will be improved as well. But any other questions you have for me, I'd be happy to answer.
Yes, well, I'll just say that's the extent of your...
That's what I could hear and follow from Mr. Rowland's.
Okay. Mr. Lee.
Yep. In the planning for the rooftop communal open space area, was there any thought given to the amenity for people using that, including things such as a sink or a toilet, given that that is the primary open space area for residents?
Yeah, well, so we've provided shade and we've provided, we haven't put in a toilet and we haven't put in a sink, no. Certainly that's something that we'd be happy to take as a condition, and we can fit that under the height control.
And how does that relate then to the floor space ratio?
We're well under the floor space ratio, it's not going to affect us.
But, I mean, was it an intentional thing not to provide, or?
No, it wasn't.
Okay. That's all for me.
All right, Stephen.
No, not for that.
Mr. Jones.
Is the, firstly, is the architect or the applicant here?
Both of them are here, yes.
Okay.
Just, can we have you come, is the architect there?
Yeah.
Sorry, sir, your name is?
Johnny Georges.
Sorry?
Johnny Georges.
Spell your surname.
Georges.
Thank you. And you're the architect?
Sorry.
Good. Thank you. We've just got a few questions. Mr. Jones.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, one of the conditions of consent is that the western balconies be reduced to 2 metres wide.
We have looked at that. We can do it, yes.
Okay. It's pretty tough to meet the amenity on 2 metres wide for a balcony space. I'm just wondering, would there be any consideration of maybe scalloping that corner of the building a little bit more, which would open up and afford more sunlight to Mr. Rowland's, if you were able to keep a bit more width in those balconies to the western side, to the north end of the site?
I think that's a good solution. Yeah.
I agree.
Yep.
I'm quite sure your 4.6 would need to be amended to deal with that encroachment. At the moment, your balcony widths are such that you don't encroach the foreshore building line. Is that correct?
No, the balconies do encroach, and the 4.6 deals with that.
Okay, so it might be the case that you might need to then, if you were to amend your plans, also recast your 4.6 to address the extra width in a balcony.
No, it would the balcony would be decreased from what's current, the 4.6 currently addresses. With that version, it would also decrease.
All right, so that could be accommodated under the current 4.6 that you've got.
Yes, it could.
Okay.
Can I also ask, just in the planning of the proposal, there appears to be a lot of toilets opening onto dining rooms and amenity type arrangements, and I get it that it happens during various amendments, but is this something that you'll revisit or are willing to revisit from an amenity point of view?
Yes, it will be a revisit. You're exactly right. There have been a number of amendments. We've been trying to get the outside of the building right. There's planning that needs to be done internally.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The decision will be taken later today and published on the council's website. Moving to the last item on the agenda, which is 7 to 11 Derby Street, Cogra. We do not have anyone speaking against the proposal, but we do have Andrew Nicol from Smith Zarnes Architects to address us. All right, and we've got Mr. Smith as well.
Sit here for the ride.
Okay, gentlemen, who would like to go first?
Yeah, I'll just give a quick explanation and answer any questions. So from the beginning with this proposal, we worked with council through a pre-DA to achieve an acceptable tower form on the site, given that there is no DCP for the site. And during the pre-DA, the general form of the building was supported by council. The development and its tower form responds to the neighbouring building, which next door has actually had an approval for additional levels to go up. And it's been designed in such a way that the larger corner site up there, number 1, wouldn't be adversely impacted should that develop in the future. The proposal itself on the ground floor level aims to promote activation, especially to both to Derby Street and the rear lane behind. On the rear lane, we've arranged a set of apartments that address that rear lane, so there's potential for future sort of activation, and that's occurring throughout the Cogra area at the moment, and there's other lanes that are sort of undergoing that gentrification, and there's a good opportunity there for passive surveillance from those apartments. Within, and then on Derby Street, we have the potential for, well, we've got commercial tenancies, and those small scale commercial tenancies, given the close proximity to the hospital, have the potential to be anything from an optometrist or a GP, it could be an accountant, it could even potentially even be a small cafe. I
do like your term lane gentrification.
Well, I mean, it's happening everywhere, and I think it could be quite good.
Turn it into Melbourne, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Well, I mean, not everything needs. Yeah, lanes can be interesting and can be nice spaces to be in if they're done well. And yeah, and then the building, there's 54 units. 72% of them achieve sole access for more than 2 hours. There's a mixture of units throughout the development, so 1, 2, and 3 bed. And units themselves have generous balconies. The idea with the mix is to cater for families and people within the area, and that is in line with the Cogra LEP city plan, which through the increase in FSR and increase in height, the aims were to promote housing close to jobs, and this building is really close to the hospital and the CBD, and to provide housing that is close to CBD services and to revitalise the centre of Cogra. So that's about all. And then it went to one design review panel meeting, changes were implemented, council then decided to send it back. We got some great feedback from the last one about increasing the size of the communal open space on the rooftop and increasing the size of that communal open space to include more areas for children's play equipment. In the previous scheme that was down on the ground. So we've implemented those changes within the current plans, and there were a few little changes to the landscaping that were required as well.
All right. Mr. Smith, anything to add?
Nothing more to add.
All right, I'll just see if there are any questions.
Yes. One of the things I couldn't pick up from the elevations was within the atrium next to the boundary, just what types of windows have you got to the bedroom there?
Yeah.
Just take us to the plan number.
Yep. So,
for example,
awning, yes. So there'd be an awning, there'd be an awning window that most likely would be a floor-to-ceiling window, against that, so you can get a decent amount of light coming into the space. There's a section that runs through there where you can see 203, those windows as well on drawing 203. So they're protected by the extension of the blade wall, so it gives fire protection and also some privacy protection.
So is that the blade wall?
Yes. Yes.
Because just looking at the windows that we have on this side and about that potential for cross viewing.
Yeah, we had a look at that with respect to somebody standing in that bedroom and coming across there, and where we understood those windows to be, and we were comfortable that, look, if you put yourself in a particular spot, you might be able to get a glimpse of you, but somebody walking around in that room generally wouldn't be aware of somebody on the other side.
And is that the reasoning for, I guess, the limited width of window?
Yeah, the limited width and pushing it into that corner and extending that blade.
Okay, and then on the northeastern side, I think where there are balconies corresponding the other direction, I think there are blank walls there.
Blank walls there. Yep.
So while you're on windows and that, can I just take you to this plan, level 11?
Yeah.
This back bedroom doesn't look like it has a window at all.
On the side, there's a window. The line.
Oh, I see, highlight above its court underneath.
That's the building next door, doesn't come up that high, so we're advertising windows and.
Right.
They had a modification to extend the height of that building.
Yes.
And they were still not going anywhere near that height.
Any reason why you wouldn't look at a couple of windows then in that location, just to make that a lighter, brighter room?
You'd be happy to have a
I mean, in looking in hindsight, I'd probably rotate the bed around, so then at least you wouldn't be in front of the window as well to start with. But
it just doesn't like it's.
Yeah, and you could probably, if you put a secondary window here, you could get some nice cross ventilation even in that room, which would be quite nice.
Maybe we can add that.
Privacy from the breezeway.
We just need to make sure conditions something to affect.
Yeah,
certainly.
Okay.
I did have another question. Sorry, Michael, have you finished?
Yes, no, thank you.
The lower ground base, the bottom basement level. I just wanted to know how, if I was foolish enough to find my way all the way to the bottom, which I think is level C3.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
How do I turn around and get back out?
So that would be, all the car parking on that level is for residents. So you'd only be going down there if you knew your car spot was down there. And if you were driving your car, then somebody would be in your car spot. So
What if someone is in my car spot? Because that does happen.
if somebody was parking in your own car spot, kind of within that space, because of that angle, it would not be a easy manoeuvre, but it could be done in 3 turns. And it's quite common practice that a residential car park is able to be designed with dead ends, on the assumption that 99% of the time somebody isn't parking in your own car space. So that's accepted within the Australian standard.
And then I just wanted to ask in relation to potential development adjoining the site towards the railway. I'm sure it's going back, there was a nice little picture. You assumed what setback from that in terms of, if I can find my little sketch.
So we were looking at an 18 to 24 metre setback. So it would be ADG compliant setbacks that could be enabled at the various levels. So the building on the adjoining site could step, or it could go straight down depending on the arrangement of the plan.
But I am correct to say that you're encouraging your neighbour to take a bit more of your setback.
At the lower levels, it can be a 12-metre separation.
That's correct,
yes,
but as we go higher,
they need to set further back.
To achieve that outcome.
And we tested that envelope, and they've still got plenty of envelope left with respect to achieving their floor space, so they wouldn't fill that envelope that we've provided.
Yeah,
That was my question too.
Sorry.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you. The decision will be taken later today and published on the council's website.
Thank you.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes the Georges River Local Planning Panel meeting for the 7th of November 2019. I do thank you all for your attendance.